Hello and welcome to today's session of comprehensive news analysis by BYJU'S IAS. Let's begin with the first article that we have for you today. This is about the ongoing situation in Afghanistan and what role can India play in Afghanistan considering that we are not in touch with the Taliban ever since they have taken over the country of Afghanistan. The author here is a retired IFS officer, so he is well versed with the ongoing situation and the past record of how India has maintained its relationship with Afghanistan. We discussed in one of the earlier articles a few days back that India held the third regional security dialogue by inviting the national security advisors of many countries in our neighborhood, including Russia, Iran, and five Central Asian nations. While China and Pakistan were also invited, but they declined the invitation. Let's first discuss what happened in that Delhi declaration. The result of Delhi declaration was the countries agreed that Afghanistan soil should not be used to sponsor any terror attacks in the region, that Taliban should not misuse the opium production facilities. There should be an inclusive government. Inclusive government means the government must have representatives from the Taliban and also from other parts of the Afghan society. Also, there should be gender parity in the country, including in the government. These declarations would not have any direct impact on Afghanistan. This is just for our sake. This is to keep our conscience clear, to tell the world that, see, we did something on Afghanistan. We actually talked about it. However, the reality is, out of all the nations that participated in this regional security dialogue, India is the only one that is still not in touch with Taliban. We have not opened up any diplomatic communication with them ever since they took over the control of Afghanistan. India is one of those countries that has shut down its mission, its embassy in Afghanistan, and we have not opened it till now. Now, this slow reaction by India has given time to other nations in our neighborhood to develop closer relationship with Afghanistan. Before going deeper into it, let me tell you a very significant difference between the Taliban of now and the Taliban of 1990s when they were controlling Afghanistan. Number one, in the 1990s when Taliban were controlling over Afghanistan, they did not have the entire country under their control. Secondly, in the 1990s, the Talibans were not concerned with how the other countries in the world are seeing them. They were not concerned whether the other countries in the world are giving them recognition or not. But now, this Taliban is slightly different from that version. Number one, now Taliban controls almost the entire country of Afghanistan, barring a few small areas maybe. Secondly, this time around, the Taliban leaders are concerned whether or not they are being given recognition by other countries around the world or not. In fact, multiple instances have been seen where Taliban leaders have said that we would like to maintain good relationship with countries in our neighborhood, including India. So this version of Taliban has not come with a carefree attitude. In fact, this Taliban has been trying to reach out to other countries so that they can get recognition just like the Afghanistan government had. Now, there are a lot of things to be discussed here about how Taliban works, about how such a group can earn money to have so many weapons, to control such a big country, to pay its army, etc. Now, there are two things that you need to understand here. Number one, the major source of earning for Taliban is the opium production that takes place on a large scale in Afghanistan. Secondly, Taliban has also had a lot of backing from China. In 1990s when Taliban was a power, China was not such a superpower in the world. But now the fortunes have changed. China has a lot of free cash that it can use to influence countries around the world. While the author says that it is time for India to play a much more active role, open up a communication channel with the Taliban, just like the other countries have done, to accept the reality that Taliban is here to stay, and to ensure that our initiatives, such as the initiative of supplying free wheat to Afghanistan, actually turns into a reality. We discussed earlier also how Indian government announced that we want to send 50,000 tons of wheat to Afghanistan. However, Pakistan has not allowed India the use of its roads to transfer this wheat to Afghanistan. Now, the author says that there are two things that India should do. Number one, India has a lot of extra wheat in our godowns. Thus, our offering must increase from 50,000 tons to at least 1 million metric tons of wheat. Secondly, in case Pakistan still does not allow Indian trucks to go through that route, India should just hand over the wheat to the World Food Program at our borders and tell the program that now it is your responsibility. How do you want to take this wheat to Afghanistan? This will help us with two things. Number one, it will help us tell the entire world that we are ready to help Afghanistan no matter what. Secondly, it will also highlight the hypocrisy of Pakistan, because Pakistan, on one hand, says that we are ready to help Afghanistan in their development, and on the other hand, is stopping food grains from reaching Afghanistan. So, these are the two things that India must do immediately in order to at least resume some sort of communication with Taliban, because that is the reality. There are a set of challenges and opportunities that India has, even beyond what the write up tells you. So, let me discuss a few of that. As I said, today's Taliban as compared to 1990s has a major difference. That is, the support that China has been given to Taliban right now did not exist earlier. In fact, China became the first country in the world to offer financial assistance to Taliban when they transferred $31 million in September. Now, $31 million is not a big sum for China considering the reserves that they have, but for Afghanistan and Taliban, it was a big indication that they have a superpower on their side. There have also been talks of extending the CPEC, that is China Pakistan Economic Corridor, till Afghanistan, specifically to use the resources of Afghanistan, such as the rare earth elements. You would have seen that India and China are in a kind of a race to influence smaller countries such as Afghanistan, such as the African countries. The problem here for India is India does not have the kind of cash that China has. So, China, just by the way of investing a lot of money in these countries, by giving them a lot of money in the form of concessional loans, China can influence these countries and force them to come to its corner. India, on the other hand, does not have so much free cash. So, what does India do? India tries to use its soft power. Like with Afghanistan, also, we hardly ever made a cash transfer. Rather than making a cash transfer, what we did was we built hospitals for them, or we trained their military officers, or we gave scholarships to their students. While these initiatives have ensured that India has a very friendly image in the minds of the Afghanistan people, China, on the other hand, focuses more on controlling the people in power, giving them money, and in turn exploiting the natural resources of the country. Afghanistan is said to have a lot of natural resources which have not been utilized over centuries, and China has its eye on them. The one opportunity that India very interestingly has is through Abdul Ghani Baradar. Now, he is the first acting deputy prime minister of Taliban, and also in the recently published list of the Time magazine, he was regarded as one of the 100 most influential people in the world. Now, the reality of the time is that we cannot choose between the good and the bad in Afghanistan. Because the Taliban are in power, we have to choose between the bad and the worse. Now, let me tell you in brief about Abdul Ghani Baradar. He is not a friend of India, but the history of this person is that he was jailed by the Pakistani authorities and he spent a lot of years in Pakistani jails where he was not treated well. After his release, he has made it very clear that he is not on good terms with Pakistan. There are a few Taliban leaders who are still influenced by Pakistan in a great way. Experts say that this can be an opportunity for India, wherein India can establish an official communication to Taliban through Baradar, not because he is a friend of India, but because he has a disliking for Pakistan, which is much more. It was a good decision to close down the Indian embassy because the lives of the officers was in danger. But now, when the situation has kind of normalized and we know the reality that the Taliban are here to stay, it is time for India to open up a channel of communication with them. to safeguard our already done investments and for the help of people of Afghanistan. So we must get the best out of the present situation. While both Pakistan and China have hosted meetings with Taliban officials, India has not done so. In fact, the only official interaction that we had with the Taliban leaders was a small exchange that happened in Doha. Comparatively, as I said, all the countries that participated in the regional security dialogue that we had are in talks with Taliban in one way or the other. Either they are hosting Taliban leaders, or like Russia and Iran, they still have a mission ongoing in Afghanistan, which India also must adopt. The second article that we have today is about the recent police operation in Gadchiroli in Maharashtra, in which 26 Maoists were killed in a police operation conducted by the Maharashtra police. Now, this article is trying to bring across the point that the Maoist movement in India is dying, although the Maoist leaders are not ready to accept that and they are still fighting for their cause, but the reality in the recent times has shown that the number of deaths of Maoists in these areas is increasing, and there has been a lot of loss of leadership in these Maoist communities. Now, it's a small article in the newspaper. It tells us that the origin of this Maoist ideology is from China, where the Chinese Revolution took place, led by Mao Zedong, which propagated this ideology of guerrilla warfare against the established government. Going beyond this article, let's look at what exactly is a Maoist problem in India, and is it really on the verge of being finished or not. In September 2021, the Home Affairs Ministry declared that the Maoist influence now in India is only in 41 districts, which is a considerable decline as compared to 96 districts as per an earlier report in 2010. This clearly shows that in the 11 years between 2010 and 2021, the number of districts under the Maoist influence has almost halved. In fact, nearby 2010, when Dr. Manmohan Singh was India's Prime Minister, he said that the Maoist problem in India still remains India's biggest internal security threat. The number of people of the armed forces who have sacrificed their life in India owing to the Maoist problem is much larger as compared to the soldiers that we have lost at the border through insurgents and Pakistan war. Now, there are two sides of this story. Some people say that the Maoist problem in India is more of an ideology problem, while the other people call it an law and order problem. Now, what exactly is the difference between them? The people who call it an ideology problem say that the Maoists and the leaders follow an ideology under which the working class, the laborers, the farmers should be empowered. They should be the ones who should be making the decisions. They should be the one who should be given complete control of their land and resources. These people argue that once that ideology is understood, once the people who are indulged in Maoist activities are educated, and once their mindset changes, then the problem will automatically resolve. Rather than using security forces, we should rather use initiatives to contact these people, to educate them, to listen to their point of view, and bring them into the mainstream. On the other hand, the other people who argue that this is actually a law and order problem say that ideology has nothing to do with it. These are leaders who are indulging in these activities because they want to gain something from the government, because they want to make an impact, and no education or no interaction with them will change anything. The only solution to this problem is to send security forces and to attack them with heavier weapons as compared to what they have. The Indian government, interestingly, has tried both of these things. We have tried to educate the people, we have tried to introduce better laws, we have tried to introduce laws under which the tribal population and the poor farmers get a right to own their own land. On the other hand, the Indian government has also ensured that we have appropriate amount of security forces placed in the areas which are affected with left wing extremism. Now, just like we discussed about the Taliban in the last article, that the Talibans get their financial power from the illegal cultivation of opium that they have. Similarly, the Maoists get money for their operation from illegal mining of minerals in the area that they control. Most of the Maoist affected areas in India, that is in Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Odisha, are areas which are rich in mineral resources. Because these areas are under the control of the Maoist, a lot of illegal mining happens here, which gives them enough money for their cause. Not just this, there have been multiple instances in the past which have proved the role of China and Pakistan also in supporting these Maoists against the Indian government. If you have some time beyond your preparation, I would really suggest you to read a very interesting book called Hello Bastar. It's a book written by author called Rahul Pandita. A very, very interesting book about the history of Maoist problem in India, about the present status. It gives you a lot of accounts about how the problem started. It gives you the side of those who are indulging in these activities and the side of the government as well. But again, only read it after you have time with your preparation. Also, let's talk about some government initiatives to counter the problem of Naxalism. Some of the examples are establishment of Greyhounds. So, Greyhounds is a specialized anti-Naxalism force in Andhra Pradesh. They have been trained to operate in the areas which are affected with Naxalism and have been extremely successful in bringing down the numbers. You must also know that Andhra Pradesh was a state where actually the Naxalism problem has roots in India. Now, you might argue that the word Naxal comes from Naxalwadi, which is a village in West Bengal. That is true. But the first set of leaders who led the Maoist movement in India actually originated from Andhra Pradesh. The Operation Green Hunt also is an operation of the central government under which the deployment of security forces was considerably increased in areas which are affected with Naxalism. In 2014, the government started the mobile tower project in left wing extremist areas. The problem is, in most of these affected areas, there is not a lot of penetration of technology. So there are not enough mobile signals, there is not enough accessibility to mobile internet or broadband, meaning two things. Number one, it becomes difficult for the government to approach these places and bring it under control. Secondly, the common population of this area who are influenced by the Maoist leaders don't have access to news outside them, outside those areas. So they can't access the news, they can't access any government communication. So for them, whatever the Maoist leaders say becomes a truth. In 2014, government started this project of installing more mobile towers so that this population can also come in touch with the mainstream media. The government also began the aspirational districts program, under which most of these districts were given priority when it comes to infrastructural projects. The government of India also started the Samadhan initiative. So, the Samadhan initiative was an initiative announced by India's Home Minister in 2017, that is Rajnath Singh. Samadhan stands for S for smart leadership, A for aggressive strategy, M for motivation and training, A for actionable intelligence, D for dashboard based key result areas, H for harnessing technology, A for action plan for each theater, and N for no access to financing. So these were some of the initiatives that Government of India took. Also, I would suggest you to read about the Dilip Bhuria Committee in 1995. This committee suggested expansion of panchayats and municipalities in the scheduled areas. So, one of the reasons why a lot of tribal youth decides to join the Maoist leaders is because they are not given control over their own land. The Dilip Bhuria committee suggested giving control over their own land to the tribals so that they can prosper themselves rather than joining the Maoist leaders, they can join the mainstream. The next article that we have is about learnings from India's COVID 19 fight. This article essentially gives you examples of those districts that have turned around their slow pace in COVID vaccination. These are just a few examples. In the past couple of months, India's COVID vaccination speed has increased considerably, and there are multiple examples of how different districts have convinced people to take the vaccine and have fought against the ongoing vaccine myths in many places. The author gives example of Jhabua in Madhya Pradesh, Aurangabad in Maharashtra, Nilgiris in Tamil Nadu, Bankatwa in Bihar, where in the beginning the vaccination rates were pretty slow, but initiatives by NGOs such as the COVID SOS, whose members include the authors also, under which people were educated. There were meetings held involving the seniors in the villages so that they could convince the people that the myths going around about vaccines are all false. Also, understand the fact that India is not the only country where a few people believed in the vaccine myths and refused to take the vaccine. In fact, the developed nations, including the US, are also facing these problems. In the US, a considerable number of people have refused to take the vaccine, saying that it is against science. So much so that the government of US has had to make it compulsory in the government offices and in the government departments to make it mandatory for their employees to take vaccines. Even then, there are many instances of people in the US resigning from their jobs saying that I will not take a vaccine, it is against my right to freedom of choice. So let's appreciate the fact that in India we have not reached such a bad situation. In India, we still have most people who believe in the science of vaccine as compared to many developed nations also who are facing this kind of a problem. There are a lot of positive signs to be seen from India's COVID vaccine journey. First positive sign is that the coverage of vaccine in the rural areas also is at par with the urban areas. Secondly, the vaccine supply, which was an issue earlier, is not an issue anymore. We now are in a situation where we have more supply than demand of the COVID vaccine. However, there are still some issues that remain which we need to look into beyond this article. First, there are over 10 crore Indians who have missed their second dose deadline, which remains an issue. Many experts have pointed out that just having one dose without the second dose would not secure you. As of today, India has given 112 crore COVID doses, which is much more than any country. And when I say much more than any country, we are not including China in this because no one, including the WHO, trusts the numbers given by the Chinese. So China says that we have vaccinated everyone, but no one trusts them. So India still is regarded as a country where most doses have been given. About 37 crore population has been fully vaccinated. That means both the doses given, while close to 80 crore people in India have had at least one dose. Now, what exactly are the concerns? Apart from the people missing their second dose, here the concern is about children. 41% of India's population right now comprises of children who are under 18 who are still not eligible for a COVID vaccine. There are many scientific studies done whether or not the vaccines are safe for children, but they have not been implemented on ground. Vaccine by Zydus Cadila received the emergency use authorization for children from 12 to 18 years, but it requires special training of needle-free administration, so that is the process that is still going on. Covaxin also is still to get approval for the age group of 2 to 18 from DCGI, that is Drug Controller General of India. Over here, it is also important to understand something about COVAX, COVAX, which is a worldwide initiative for equitable distribution of COVID-19 vaccine. So COVAX is an initiative by many developed nations and some NGOs such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. What they did was they started distributing vaccines to developing nations specifically who would not otherwise be able to afford vaccine in the beginning. So what they did was they took extra doses from the developed nations and distributed it to the developing nations without charging them anything. The first country in the world to get vaccine delivered from COVAX was Ghana as early as in February 2021. After Ghana, countries such as Moldova, Ivory Coast, Uruguay also received vaccine under this. Now let me come to the most interesting part. The most interesting part is that India has received the highest number of vaccines under the COVAX program, for which we have not had to pay anything. These were some of the initial doses of vaccine that we got. Now, To return the favor, Indian government has announced that we will also be contributing to the COVAX scheme so that the vaccines can be distributed to other nations also. Now that we are in a position that we have some extra vaccines. The Indian government will also be resuming the export of vaccines under the Vaccine Maitri program from beginning of the next year. Under the Vaccine Maitri program, we held a lot of countries by exporting vaccines, which also led to criticism of the Indian government. Remember, under the Vaccine Maitri program, most of the vaccines that we have given to are to Bangladesh. And there are a bunch of other countries as well. The next article that we have is an interesting article about the collegium system in India. So let me tell you the background story of this. So this article has been written in the context of two very interesting transfer orders to two High Court judges. Number one, the Chief Justice of Madras High Court, that is Justice Sanjeev Banerjee, is transferred to the Meghalaya High Court. This is the first transfer. Second transfer is Justice Muneshwar Nath Bhandari is being transferred from Allahabad High Court to the Madras High Court. Now, let me very quickly tell you the significance of these orders, and then we will focus more upon the collegium system because that is more relevant to the examination. So what happened was Sanjeev Banerjee, who is a Madras High Court Chief Justice, still has 2 more years till he retires at the age of 62. He is being transferred to Meghalaya High Court. Now, Madras High Court is one of the largest and one of the most significant high courts in the country, which has 75 judges. From there, he is being transferred to Meghalaya High Court, which only has a strength of 4 judges. So it is seen as a kind of a punishment posting. Not that his stature will reduce, but just that he was in an office where he was heading a high court with 75 judges, and now he is being transferred to a high court with only 4 judges, including himself. The second interesting part is that a high court judge from Allahabad is being transferred to Madras High Court. Now, this is also interesting. Why? Because with his transfer, Muneshwar Nath Bhandari will become the senior most judge of Madras High Court. Means after his transfer, most probably Muneshwar Nath Bhandari will become the Chief Justice of Madras High Court. If he would have remained in Allahabad, he had more senior people before him, so he would not have had a chance to become Chief Justice. But now that he is being transferred to Madras High Court, he will most probably become the Chief Justice of that High Court. Both these decisions have become controversial because experts say that there was no need to give such transfer order. But this is not the first time that these kind of controversial decisions have been given. For example, last year, during the unfortunate Delhi riots, a Delhi High Court judge was transferred just a few days after he criticized the role of the Delhi police in not controlling the riots. So these kind of transfer orders are not very unique and have also been a part of controversy. So let's look at what is happening in judiciary and how does a transfer of high court judges actually take place. There are many experts recently who have said that the government and the judiciary, which should be separate and independent from each other, are coming close to each other, which is unhealthy. Recently, the Law Minister and the Chief Justice of India both praised each other, with the Law Minister Kiran Rijiju saying that the Chief Justice of India will create a new dawn in the judiciary, while the Chief Justice of India is saying that the Law Minister was the only one in the recent times who has recognized the hard work of the judiciary. These kind of statements do not augur well for the concept of separation of power between the different arms of the government. I'm sure you all are fully aware of the 3 judges cases through which the collegium system in India came into being. Collegium means the Chief Justice of India and the 4 senior most Supreme Court judges who collectively decide and recommend to the President about the transfer of High Court judges and also appointment of High Court and the Supreme Court judges. The process is that this collegium has a meeting. After the meeting, when they decide the name or when they decide the transfer order, they recommend it to the Law Minister, who passes it on to the Prime Minister, through which it goes to the President of India. Thus, officially, the government has no role to play in this, and the collegium's decision is considered as final. However, many experts have said that the government has tried to influence the judges multiple times in the past. Now it also gives us a chance to look at the role of the collegium. Collegium, as you can see, is a group of five judges, the senior most judges of the Supreme Court, who decide on the most important appointments in the Indian judiciary. Thus, the government has no role to play in it. The other experts from outside the judiciary also have no role to play in it. This has led to a lot of controversy for various reasons. Number one, the meetings of the collegium are closed door meetings, so no one knows what names are they discussing. Secondly, there is no set parameter as to who will become the next Supreme Court judge. For example, the criteria for becoming a Supreme Court judge is that you should have been a High Court judge for 5 years. But the problem is, at any time in India, there are multiple High Court judges with over 5 years of experience. So, out of those multiple judges, who to choose, who to recommend, that is entirely on the collegium. There are also allegations of corruption in the collegium meetings. Thus, multiple committees and commissions in the past have suggested replacing the collegium with a different kind of a commission. These are some of those recommendations. The second ARC, the National Advisory Council, the National Commission to Review the Working of the Constitution, and even the Law Commission have recommended that we need to find an alternative to the collegium system. The government did try to introduce the NJAC through the 99th constitutional amendment, but it was struck down by the Supreme Court. Now, why is it that we need to have a transfer of judges in the High Court? What purpose does it serve? Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, when talking about this issue in the Constituent Assembly, said it might be necessary that one judge may be transferred from one High Court to another in order to strengthen the High Court elsewhere by importing better talents which may not be locally available. However, many times this transfer has seemed to be arbitrary. This matter first came up in 1977 when Justice Sankal Chand was transferred from Gujarat to the Andhra Pradesh High Court. In this case, the Supreme Court said that the transfer of judges can only take place in the public interest, and any transfer which is not in the public interest can be challenged in the court. In 1994, in the K. Ashok Reddy case, the Supreme Court repeated the same thing, that the transfer of judges can be challenged in the Supreme Court. However, the challenge can only be done by the concerned judge. So the judge who is being transferred is the only one who can file a case in the Supreme Court, not anyone else. Just to give you a good line to write in the paper also, the Supreme Court has also said multiple times, sunlight is the best disinfectant, meaning that in order to ensure that there is no corruption, in order to ensure that there is absolute transparency, the best thing is to open it up for everything. So the same should be applied for collegium system. The same should be applied for such kind of orders. That is, when the Supreme Court recommends transfer of a judge, they should give proper reasoning about why the judge is being transferred. The next article that we have focuses on the problem of cyberbullying, a problem that we don't often talk about in India. Bullying is a form of harassment that is usually seen in schools and colleges, unfortunately, where a child is forced to do or not do a certain thing, where a child is forced to change his or her behavior and is mentally harassed. UNESCO recently decided that the first Thursday of November should be celebrated as the International Day Against Violence and Bullying at School, including cyberbullying. This article tells us that the instances of cyberbullying have increased considerably since the number of children who are going online for either their classes or for just entertainment has increased considerably. With COVID 19, since most of the children were forced to take their classes online, and they had to spend more time on their mobile devices, the instances of cyberbullying have increased. In fact, two-thirds of internet users in India are from the age group of 12 to 29 years, making them more susceptible to cyberbullying. Not surprisingly, girls, disabled people, and people belonging to ethnic minorities have faced more of such problems as compared to other people. The UNESCO did publish a booklet with the NCRT on the topic safe online learning at the times of COVID, but not a lot of things have changed. Now, why exactly do we have this problem and what have we done in the past to control this? We should accept the fact that India has not really been open to this idea of discussing bullying in the open. When you were in school or in college, you would have seen this happening with you or with someone else, but very seldom do we actually address this issue. We consider it as a learning and as a part of growing up, but actually, it's not healthy for the child's mind or for the child's health at large. Now, the problem is that in India, we don't have a specific law which criminalizes cyberbullying. The existing laws, such as the IT Act of 2000 and the IPC 1860, can be used against some instances of bullying, but there is no specific law that gives a definition of what exactly is cyberbullying. Also, the problem is most of these cyberbullying cases happen on online platforms which are Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or these kind of platforms, which are mostly based in the US. Now, these US firms have made their structure with the help of the best lawyers in the world in such a way that the laws of Indian government don't apply to them. It is almost impossible for the Indian government to force these companies to do anything against their will, as you would have seen many times. There is also a debate about right to be forgotten. Now, what exactly is this? A few years back, there was a person in Spain who went to the court saying that a few years ago I was bankrupt, but now I have given back all the loans. But the problem is, if someone Googles my name, they still see that I was a bankrupt back then. So my image has been hurt because Google and other websites are not just removing my name. So this person went to the court saying that companies such as Google should be forced to remove my name from their database because I never gave them permission to put my name there at the first place. Meaning that the person said that I have the right to be forgotten. I don't want to appear in the search results. Interestingly, the court did give the order to the company, but that order only applies within the European Union and not outside it. What I'm trying to say is, let's imagine a situation when someone has taken a personal photo of you which you don't want to be circulated online. But once the person uploads that photo or video online and someone else downloads it or copies it, there is almost no way that you can delete it from anywhere. Once something publishes online, it becomes a part of the perpetual memory almost forever. You cannot do anything to remove that from the database of company, meaning that the person can keep on harassing you, can keep on blackmailing you, and there is little that you or even the law can do about it. So the right to be forgotten has to be made a reality in countries such as India also, so that children and other people also who are facing issues of cyberbullying are encouraged to open up in front of police, in front of parents, in front of authorities. Because the problem with most of the crimes is that if a crime is committed against you, you think that you are the one who has done wrong. If someone comes and hits you, you will not tell anyone because you think that you have done something wrong. So the person who is a victim is made to feel bad, which should not happen. The victim should be encouraged to open up, and that will only happen when we have good laws to protect them. There are instances of people speaking up against it. Recently, at a UNICEF session in India, Ayushman Khurrana talked about cyberbullying, which is a good initiative. Melania Trump, wife of Donald Trump, when she was a first lady, she also said that she would like to work on the problem of cyberbullying and educate people about how to tackle this problem. Although not a lot was done from her end, but at least it did make news and it did come in the mainstream media because of that. These are the articles that were important from the Hindu newspaper today. Now, a couple of mains practice questions. Number one, despite suggestions from various commissions, the Supreme Court hasn't allowed any reforms in the collegium system. In this context, enlist the merits and demerits of the existing collegium system. Second, eradicating the problem of cyberbullying requires concrete measures from the policymakers in India. Suggest such measures, keeping in mind the present scenario. Both of these questions have to be answered within 250 words each. Thank you so much for watching the video.